Hello, and welcome to Siddhartha Chapter 9, The Ferryman. So, if you open up to page 82 in your book and in your packet to Chapter 9, so I still want you to read through the chapter. I'm going to go over some of the major points of the chapter. However, I still would like you to read through it. If you have any questions, please put them on the Chapter 9 discussion board in My Connect. If you don't have any questions, you don't have to post anything on the discussion board. So this chapter aligns with right livelihood. So this again is part of the Eightfold Path. Remember, the Eightfold Path isn't a straight path. It works in a circle. So all these things intertwine together. So right livelihood has to do with your work having a respect for life. And then if you don't have a respect for life, it'll be a barrier to progress on your spiritual path. Remember, Buddhism promotes the principle of equality of all living beings, even little bugs, and respect for life, all life. Buddha discourages those who deal in drugs, alcohol, weapons, or any job harmful to human life. Buddha would not recommend having a liquor store, a gun shop, or be a butcher. The river. The river is a big component of this chapter. Siddhartha remains by the river in this chapter. Remember, he woke up from his dream. He starts the chapter by saying, I will remain by this river, thought Siddhartha. It is the same river which I crossed on my way to the town. A friendly ferryman took me across. I will go to him. My path once led me from his hut to a new life, which is now old and dead. Remember, he had hit rock bottom before he was awakened into this new life. May my present path, my new life, start from there, meaning the river. So some important quotes that have to do with the river are, in his heart he heard the newly awakened voice speak, and it said to him, love this river, stay by it, and learn from it. Remember, the river is an important symbol within the novel. He sees the river, what it means to him, what it symbolizes for him. He talks about it always being the same, and yet every moment was new, in a sense that it's always water. It's always water in the river, but it's always different. So it might be at a different spot, yet it's always water. It might be moving a different way, yet it's always water. It might be stagnant. It might be moving. It might be at a different place, yet it is always the same. It's always water. As he stays at the river, he learned from it how to listen with a still heart, with a waiting, open soul, without passion, without desire, without judgment, without opinion. Perhaps this is how we should listen. I think a lot of times we are a very passive listener. When we listen, we don't really listen. So a lot of times we're listening to think about, and we're thinking about what to say next, or we're thinking of way to agree with someone or disagree with someone. We're really not taking in what they're saying. So instead, for example, if someone says, I did really bad on that math test, a lot of times we would say, yeah, I did really bad too. Or so-and-so did really bad. Oh, so-and-so did really good. Maybe instead we could say, what about it made it bad for you? Why did you do poorly on it? Or what do you think you could do next time? So a lot of times we're just listening to think about what can we say next? And we're not really taking in what someone has to say. So I encourage you to be more of an active listener. If we were in class, we would have an active listening practice. So I would like you to practice on being more of an active listener. Ask questions when someone's talking to get more involved in their conversation. Siddhartha says the river has many voices. He hears the holy in the river. And finally, the last quote, the river is everywhere at the same time. This goes back to that previous quote. At the source and at the mouth, at the waterfall, at the ferry, at the current in the ocean, and in the mountains, everywhere, and that the present only exists for it, not the shadow of the past nor the shadow of the future. I like this quote because a lot of times we live in our past thinking, what if, and we don't, or we look at our future like, what should I do? What should I do? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And we don't spend a lot of time in the present where we should be. So if we're not spending time in the present, as it becomes our past, then we come up with what if? What if I did that yesterday? That would have been really good. So I encourage you to spend time in the present and take one day at a time. When we look too much in the past, we're always regretting and we always never feel satisfied. When we look towards the future, we're always stressing, like, what should I do? What college should I go to? What major should I have? And we're not staying and enjoying the present time. So I encourage you to stay in the present and enjoy that time. Vasudeva, the ferryman. In Hindu mythology, Vasudeva is the father of Krishna. I think this is one of your key terms you can write down in your packet. The son of Yadava dynasty. The name means good deity. So remember, Siddhartha met the ferryman when he came into the town previously. I read that from the first paragraph. The ferryman initially envies Siddhartha's perceived life. And what I mean by perceived life is we see Siddhartha in all his rich clothes, his fine appearance, and yet Siddhartha says he envies his life, meaning the ferryman. I think that happens in real life, right? We tend to perceive someone else's life, we look at it and we envy it, yet other people may envy our lives. In this case, I think Siddhartha is envying the ferryman's life because maybe he perceives he has more peace and he's satisfied with his job, where Siddhartha at this time still hasn't found peace within his heart. Siddhartha asked to stay on as Vasudeva's assistant. And then we learn a little bit more about how Vasudeva is a good listener. Here's that key concept again, being a good listener. Siddhartha tells him about his life, and Vasudeva listened with great attention. It was one of the ferryman's greatest virtues that, like few people, he knew how to listen without his saying a word. The speaker felt that Vasudeva took in every word quietly, expectantly, that he missed nothing. He's being an active listener. Notice he's not saying he interrupted him. He's not saying what he wants to say. He's just listening. And Vasudeva tells him, the river has taught me to listen, and Siddhartha will learn from it as well. So life at the river. As time goes on, many travelers that come mistake them for brothers. And as time goes on, they both listen silently to the water, which to them was not just the water, but the voice of life, the voice of being or perpetual becoming. People that travel the water start to talk to Siddhartha and Vasudeva and ask for comfort or advice. Maybe they ask for advice because they feel they're good listeners. We like to ask advice from people that are good listeners, right? We won't not ask for advice from someone who's interrupting us. And as years pass, monks come along to be taken across the river. News is spread that the illustrious one was ill and soon die. And the illustrious one, remember, is Buddha, the one who Govinda went to follow earlier, but Siddhartha did not. Kamala. So Kamala in this chapter, she comes up again. Kamala and her son's name is Siddhartha. Realize Siddhartha doesn't know he has a son. Well, they're on this journey to see the illustrious one and are close to the ferry. Kamala gets bitten by a black snake. Snakes symbolize evil. The color black symbolizes death. Vasudeva hears the boy's cries for help and brings Kamala back to the hut. Siddhartha recognizes Kamala and recognizes that he has a son. He looks at this boy and was like, whoa, he looks a lot like me. This is my son. And looking at Siddhartha, Kamala says, now I see that your eyes have also changed. They have become quite different. How do I recognize that you are still Siddhartha? You are Siddhartha, yet you are not like him. I think she says that because, like other parts of Siddhartha's life, he has changed. He's been with the ferryman for a while, so he probably looks a little bit more at peace. He looks like a different person. He's not in that worldly life like he was when he was with Kamala. Finally, Kamala looked at him steadily. It had been her intention to make a pilgrimage to Gautama, to see the face of the illustrious one, to obtain some of his peace, and instead she only found Siddhartha, and it was good, just as good as she's seen the other, just as good as she's seen the Buddha. Perhaps she's saying that because she sees the peace in Siddhartha. Maybe she sees that holiness that she was looking for, or she felt like she could find in Buddha. She feels like she has found it with Siddhartha. Kamala dies, and Siddhartha is now left with his son, which is going to be another chapter in Siddhartha's life and also brings him other challenges. So please read through chapter 9. And if you have any questions, please post them in the discussion board on my Connect.